Hello everyone. Today's lecture is on the topic of material transfer and machine loading and unloading in industrial robotics. We will be mainly dealing with the material transfer part. There are many robo applications in which the robo is required to move a work part or other material from one location to another. The most basic of these applications is where the robo picks the part up from one position and transfers it to another position. In other applications, the robo is used to load and or unload a production machine of some type. There are mainly two categories of material handling applications. The first one is material transfer applications, and the second one is machine loading, unloading applications. We'll go through some general considerations in robo material handling. The first one is part positioning and orientation. In most parts handling applications, the parts must be presented to the robo in a known position and orientation. Robots used in these applications do not generally possess highly sophisticated sensors, example machine vision, that would enable them to seek out a part and identify its orientation before picking it up. Second, gripper design. Special end effectors must be designed for the robot to grasp and hold the work part during the handling operation. Third, minimum distances moved. The material handling application should be planned so as to minimize the distances that the parts must be moved. This can be accomplished by proper design of the work cell layout, example, keeping the equipment in the cell close together, by proper gripper design, for example, by using a double gripper in a machine loading and unloading operation, and by careful study of the robo motion cycle. Robo work volume. The cell layout must be designed with proper consideration given to the robo's capability to reach the required extreme locations in the cell and still allow room to maneuver the gripper. Fifth, robo weight capacity. There is an obvious limitation on the material handling operation that the load capacity of the robo must not be exceeded. A robo with sufficient weight carrying capacity must be specified for the application. Sixth, accuracy and repeatability. Some applications require the materials to be handled with very high precision. Other applications are less demanding in this respect. The robo must be specified accordingly. Seventh, robo configuration, degrees of freedom and control. Many parts transfer operations are simple enough that they can be accomplished by a robo with 2 to 4 joints of motion. Machine loading applications often require more degrees of freedom. Robo control requirements are unsophisticated for most material handling operations. Palletizing operations and picking parts from a moving conveyor are examples where the control requirements are more demanding. Eighth, machine utilization problems. It is important for the application to effectively utilize all pieces of equipment in the cell. In a machine loading and unloading operation, it is common for the robo to be idle while the machine is working, and the machine to be idle while the robo is working. In cases where a long machine cycle is involved, the robo is idle a high proportion of the time. To increase the utilization of the robo, consideration should be given to the possibility for the robo to serve more than a single machine. Now we will move on to material transfer applications. These are defined as operations in which the primary objective is to move a part from one location to another location. They are among the most straightforward of robo applications to implement. There are two types. One, pick and place operations. The robo simply picks the part from one location and places it in another location. Two, palletizing and depalletizing operations. It's more complicated. The robo must place each part in a different location on the pallet, thus forcing the robo to remember or compute a separate motion cycle until the pallet is fully loaded. Now, pick and place operations. Pick and place operations involve tasks in which the robo picks up the part at one location and moves it to another location. In the simplest case, the part is presented to the robo by some mechanical feeding device or conveyor in a known location and orientation. The known location is a stationary location, achieved either by stopping the conveyor at the appropriate position or by using a mechanical stop to hold the part at the stationary location. An input interlock, commonly based on using a simple limit switch, would be designed to indicate that the part is in position and ready for pickup. The robo would grasp the part, pick it up, move it and position it at a desired location. The orientation of the part remains unchanged during the move. The desired location is usually at a position where there is the capability to move the part out of the way for the next delivery by the robot. This basic case is illustrated in the following figure. In this simple case, the robot needs only 2 degrees of freedom. As shown in the figure, 1 degree of freedom is needed to lift the part from the pickup point and put it down at the drop-off point. The 2nd degree of freedom is required to move the part between these 2 positions. In some pick-and-place operations, a reorientation of the work part is accomplished during the move. This part reorientation requires a robot with 1 or more additional degrees of freedom. One complication encountered in material transfer operations is when the robot is required to track a moving pickup point. In robotic materials handling, tracking arises when parts are carried along a continuously moving conveyor, typically an overhead hook conveyor, and the robot is required to pick parts from the conveyor. The opposite case is when the robot must put parts onto the moving conveyor. In either case, a more sophisticated sensor interlock system is required to determine the presence and location of the parts in the robot's tracking window. Another complication arises in material transfer operations as well as palletizing and other operations when different objects are being handled by the same robot. In material transfer, a single conveyor might be used to move more than one type of part. The robot must be interfaced to some type of sensor system capable of distinguishing between the different parts so that the robot can execute the right program subroutine for the particular part. Now we will move on to palletizing and related operations. Pallets are used for materials handling and storage in industry. Instead of handling individual cartons or other containers, a large number of these containers are placed on a pallet and the pallet is then handled. The pallets can be moved mechanically within the plant or warehouse by forklift trucks or conveyors. Shipments of palletized product to the customer are very common because of the convenience in handling, both at the manufacturer's house and the customer's receiving department. The only handling of the individual cartons arises when the product is placed onto the pallet, that is palletizing, or when it is removed from the pallet, depalletizing. The loading of cartons onto pallets is typically heavy work performed manually by unskilled labor. It is also repetitive work, picking cartons up at one location and putting them down at another location, except that the locations change from carton to carton. A typical pallet configuration is illustrated in the following figure, showing how each container must be placed at a different location on the pallet. The variation in carton location is in 3 dimensions, not simply 2 dimensions, since the pallets are usually stacked on top of each other in layers. Robots can be programmed to perform this type of work. Because the motion pattern varies in the palletizing operation, a computer-controlled robot using a high-level programming language is convenient. This feature facilitates the mathematical computation of the different pallet locations required during the loading of a given pallet. There are a number of variations on the palletizing operation. These other operations include depalletizing operations, the reverse of palletizing, in which the robot removes cartons from a pallet and places them onto a conveyor or other location. Inserting parts into cartons from a conveyor. This is similar to palletizing. Removing parts from cartons. This is the reverse of the preceding situation. Stacking and unstacking operations, in which objects, usually flat objects such as metal sheets or plates, are stacked on top of each other. The reference book used for this lecture is titled Industrial Robotics, Technology, Programming and Applications. The authors being Michael Gruber, Mitchell Weiss, Roger Nagel, Nicholas Audrey and Ashish Datta. This is the second edition of this book, published by McGraw-Hill Publishers. The figures in this lecture were taken from this book. Thank you.